Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Evangelista, and I'm a gallery assistant with the Maryland Federation of Art, and I am here to introduce our guest, Keith Sullivan. Keith is an abstract expressionist painter who works in a variety of mediums, and typically on canvas. At first glance, Keith's pieces are visually chaotic and spontaneous, but all controlled within the dimensions of the canvas. He works on multiple pieces at once and is constantly exploring abstract visual realities. I'd also like to briefly introduce our host, Will Scott. He is an art historian who bridges the gap between the artist and the public.
Hello, everyone. If you're one of our regular viewers, you know what to expect. For any of you that are watching for the first time, maybe because you know Keith and his work and are looking forward to it, particularly if you saw his work that's currently hanging in the Winter Member Show. Will Talks currently are intended to feature an artist who is participating in a current show in the Circle Gallery. And the talk is intended to let you know a little bit more about some of the fantastic artists that are participating in our shows now. The diversity, both in content and in every other aspect, style, medium of our shows, we're very happy to say is constantly increasing and improving. And so Keith is uh, not an entirely conventional artist, at least not compared to many of the artists that have been showing in our shows in past years. And I think that makes him, I was struck by his work, and that's one reason why I asked him if he would participate in the Will Talk. And he has agreed to do that. He has an interesting background. He's not originally a local artist, and he has had a career in music, in contemporary music, as a lighting engineer and a sound engineer, and doing all that kind of work for some well-traveled and recognized groups. But now we're fortunate, and you can see him, he's seated in his studio. He has devoted himself to his artwork. It's very diverse, and he is constantly producing. So I'm really excited about getting to talk with him tonight. So, hello, Keith. Do you want to just say very briefly what you think are the high points of your background, maybe that I didn't mention? And I'm not going to read your artist statement because you're here and you can say whatever you like, and then we'll let that lead us into our conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, hi. My name is Keith. I'm also known as Space Monkey, Space Monkey Art, the persona that has become part of my life. But Keith, and I'm an abstract expressionist. I find myself attached to, I really just absorb, a lot of, whether I'm listening to something, looking at something, reading something, multiple things. And I find myself just sort of absorbing those things and regurgitating them, if you want to say, back onto, surfaces. I'm always, multiple mediums on many different surfaces. I'm always putting, a medium to a surface all the
Well,
time.
let's sort of start there, Keith, because that's a really good sort of segue into the diversity and the complexity of your work. But first, I want to take, and I want everybody to know that I brought this up with Keith in a conversation. So I'm doing this with the intent of us getting to know him better. You refer to yourself as Space Monkey, and your work is Space Monkey art. Um, that's not something that people do every day, to take that kind of identity, that kind of persona. And it makes you more distinctive.
Well,
But
coming up, like you had said, we had talked earlier, right? I mean, I spent about 13 years or more in and about the entertainment industry, working in all, different facets of it. And, I came to Maryland and I began doing that again through a lighting company. And I very much enjoyed that. Always having a studio, always making art all those years, ever since I came out of at art school. And it was it's something just escalated to a point where, I don't know how I can say it. Like, I was doing before I
So it's you. It's who you are.
I paint with my own brush. I've always been influenced by or inspired by masters that I consider that that I've studied and look up to. But like I paint with my own brush or knife or whatever I can get my hands on, or my own hands. Like I said, I'm an inspirational type of an artist, in the fact that like I'm improvisational, I guess, as far as the way that
let me pick up on that.
I can't say I'm gonna go one way or the other in the course of a day or a night in my studio. Some of my best days in my studio are days where I decide I'm not gonna be in my studio, and before you know.
So your life and your art are really intertwined and inseparable then. And as an art historian, I mentioned that to you, and I can't help but filter anytime I meet an artist or look at an artist's work through all of that stuff that's in my head from my training and my career. And the way that you describe yourself is really not the way that the average artist or more conventional artists do. That they talk about their study, they talk about their preparation, they talk about working in the studio. But
coming up through art school, I was very, I spent a lot of time learning to those points where then I had my wonderful professors, which would be like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, you show me a body of work at the end of the semester, I don't need to see you. I don't need to see you at all. You don't need to come to class. I mean, I did the figure drawing, all that stuff. But like, It came down to it. Like I earned the ability to just say, all right, here we go. And I'm going to take this on a ride. And like, and that's how it's sort of escalated into the monster that it is to the.
Well, it's not a monster at all. I know what you're trying to say, I think, and I appreciate that. But let's see where it's taken you. Juliana, if you could put up the work. This is the work that Keith has in the show, and it's as soon as I saw it, I was drawn to it because of the energy and the dynamism, and also the fact that I couldn't completely understand on my own. And that's one of the great things I hope about Will Talks, is that we get to let the artists speak for themselves. And so I'll start with the title, and then Keith, I'd want you to
Sure.
explain the title's connection to the image, if you can. Talking backwards and upside down. That's great. So what is it that's visually happening that title should be sort of directing me towards?
Well, like I said, I'm a very improvisational artist, and sort of when inceptions for me sometimes can be a piece of something I'm writing, or something that maybe jumps out of me when I'm in one of my journals or something, or the idea behind something that, like I said, I'm regurgitating a lot of times. And this painting sort of was my personal assessment of the chaos in which the world we live in is like a world of digital speed. No one's got time for anybody else. No one's got time to listen to more than like 8 seconds of this, 8 seconds of that, swipe this, swipe that, you know what I mean? Talking over one another, talking, so it's like, who's saying the truth? Who's saying not, who's talking backwards? Who's talking upside down? Which direction are we spinning on this planet? Like, are we waking up and the sun's spinning on the other side and scorching it and coming back around again, like kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Where are we in the digital landscape of the chaos of what I believe, like almost like the spackle of life has become. So I really kind of attacked this canvas and the thought along the way of that as I write into work and
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'll and I work on the floor, I work on the wall, I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until eventually I stretch it. I build my own stretchers, so I stretch that onto a canvas stretcher that I've made myself, and I'll stretch that, and then it goes from there. And I mean, then it'll go back on the floor, up on the wall, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until it lets me know when it's finished. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, Keith, I have to say that sometimes being the art historian that I am, I feel makes me overly judgmental, because I have all of these kind of, old master images from all periods of at least Western art, not so much African or Asian art. And in your case, all of that stuff that I know, like early 20th century Dada and Surrealism, or you called yourself an expressionist artist and you said you paint on the floors. That makes me think literally of Jackson Pollock and people like that in the 1950s in the American abstract expressionist movement. And while I'm saying all of that, you're pulling this off. I really mean that. You're pulling this off. You're doing something distinctive. I can't quite name anybody else that I would say, oh, yeah, I can see that Keith's really into so and so. I mean, this is a very individualistic, creative act that you're performing here. Keith, tell us a little bit about, because it's hard. I know I can't
well,
read these things.
that's the whole thing. I love writing and into my work, something that it's in my head, a word, a phrase, a sentence, something I wrote, something I read. But I love doing that, and I do it in ways that make you need to know what it says, and like
Mhm.
and struggle to know what it says, and sometimes you're not going to figure out what it says, but like it's all part of the process of my work, and I've been like that my whole life. And so those are pieces of writing that are actually in my journal, and then I just carve them into the canvas, like as I'm painting. And they were written
Yeah.
in my journal based on what I had said about the piece. The just wrapping your head around the digital speed of the world we live in. It's just nothing is it's almost like bacon being cooked inside your head.
Yeah.
You
So,
know,
well, let me get this really clear because I think it's a crucial point. When I look or anybody looks at one of your works, if there is text, it's from you, it's from your journals. You're not quoting somebody. A lot of our artists
most
who
of the
are collage.
most of the time I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, I know I've written a couple of things I've found in a fortune cookie, something like that, or a word or a phrase I read in a book. But like for the most part, everything is
Yeah.
from my journals. I write all day, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I publish, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, that's great. And that's great for me to know when I go back into the gallery and look at this piece on the wall, because a lot of collage artists and many of the collage artists or assemblage artists that are, and some others that wouldn't necessarily fall into that category are using words and texts and images, and they're often borrowed, and it's part of the piece, understanding and appreciating the piece is recognizing those borrowings and how that inflects the reaction of the viewer
and
slash reader.
sometimes
But
I mean, sometimes I do. I love pulling from heavy metal magazines, and I'll pull like whole chunks of comic or revamp
mhm,
the little bubble boxes into something
yeah,
much work. So yeah, I mean, I do use all types of things like that. Sometimes unknowingly, like I said, I'll grab maybe a piece of newspaper that I like the way the paint crossed the newspaper because I've
yeah,
I walk on most of the work that I work on, until I down and pick it up and be like, yeah, that in something or is part of something or will be part of something. I destroy mostly nothing. Everything becomes part of something else.
Yeah. Personally and as a art historian, but also just as an individual, talking with you, looking at your work, that really means a lot to me because it's the spontaneity, it's the continuity, and it's the kind of unity of who you are and what you're sharing with the rest of the world. And we are beginning to run close to our time. So, Juliana, if you could pull up the next image.
The painting that's hanging right now, that is it along its journey as I paint.
Okay.
So that's what that is.
Wow. I'm not sure that I would recognize that unless I saw them side by side in the gallery. So
yeah, you saw right
what
now,
are these things here? Tell us what these things are.
It's upside down from the hanging that it is in the gallery. But that's it along the it's
Okay, now I see the rabbit. Yeah.
I take photos of my work along their journeys only so that I can stare at it at night or when I'm out or if we're away somewhere. I've got a phone full of my paintings, so even if we're sitting in a hotel room, I can just stare at that and be like, all right, this is where I'm at, because it's just it's just a way,
it's who you are. I've rarely met an artist personally that talks about their work the way that you do and explains their creative process anything like yours, because it's so continuous. So maybe this is the last question that I have time to ask you this evening. Do you ever stop? Does that process ever halt deliberately or accidentally? And if it does, what does that mean and how does it happen? Do you say, I'm going to take a break for a couple of days and go to the mountains and just look at sunsets, or how does it happen?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I will be like, okay, I'm not working today, and I'll put clothes on that are don't have paint all over them, and and maybe my wife, I'll convince her we should go do take a hike or something. But a lot of times in me doing that, I found myself in my studio 9 out of 10 times. You know what I mean? And I'm touching something, and I'm like, "Jeez, and I go change, and I wind up in there." But I do actually enjoy taking steps back, and I don't a lot. And it's funny the way that happens. But I will go, and take a walk or take a hike or do something. But I will always find myself in that. As I'm walking, maybe I find something on the road. I'm like, well, that's pretty neat. I mean, one of the things is walking around Home Depot, and the contractors throw their list cardboard things and paper all over the ground. And sometimes I come across one, it's just a neat shape or whatever, and I'll take it and I'll paint on it. I'll do something. I find myself finding myself within an artistic headspace, even when I'm trying to take a break. But I do enjoy stepping back, and I do have some very close friends and my very close friend who I go take a break with sometimes, him and his wife, he builds my canvas stretchers once in a while for me if I need something specific to commission I'm working on or something. Because I do commission work for people. Here and there. So yeah.
Well, this is a really good point to end on then, I think, Keith, for a couple of reasons. One, our time constraint, but two, you mentioned that you take commissions. And I can imagine that commissioning a piece from you is a very dynamic experience. It's not like saying to some artists, and which is more conventional and a wonderful thing in itself. I wanted your landscape that's sold in the last exhibit. Can you do a similar one for me? I don't expect that's the way that you work. Am I right?
No, people will a piece of my work because they want my work. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're already intrigued by that. So, but what they will be maybe a specific size. I will build that size.
Yeah.
Color range. Like, you know, I like really getting like, I do fast jokey things where like I'll go to a couple or I'll go to a person and be like, what are your first three top favorite colors? You know what I mean? Right off the top of your head, give them to me, spit them right out right away. You know what I mean? And from that, I'll make that assessment. I mean, I like working with the major, you know, kind of a, like, give me three colors, give me a size you're looking for, you know, like, you know, and I
Yeah.
will work with someone all the way along, and I will keep them in the loop and stuff, and until I bring it and hang it in your house.
Well,
So
Keith, that sounds great, and I hope people are going to listen to this and hear that, because that sounds like people who get a piece of your commissioned work are getting a lot more than out of it than just that final image, that final piece that's going to go in their home. And I've really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know more about your working process and how dynamic and creative you are. And I hope that people will be able to see this and they'll come and actually see your work in the Circle Gallery, and continuing to follow you. And I really am glad, as a board member of the MFA, that you've decided to become a member and participate in our shows. And so I look forward to seeing you maybe at the closing reception for the show in a week or so.
plan on being there. I do plan on being there. Yes.
Okay, well, everybody who hears this, remember that you'll get a chance on the 25th at the closing reception for the winter member show to meet Keith Sullivan in person and maybe talk about a commission. All right.
I'll be honored.
Keith, thanks again. It's been great talking with you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So
Okay. And thank you, Juliana, for your technical support. And I look forward to seeing the finished interview.